My grandfather raised his glass at his own 80th birthday, smiled at me across a table of 14 people, and asked the one question that would end my family. "How's that check treating you, sweetheart?" 14 faces turned toward me, warm in the candlelight, glasses half lifted, waiting for me to say I was fine, the way I always said it, the way I'd said it at every dinner for 4 years. What none of them knew, what my mother had spent 4 years making sure no one knew, was that I had never seen a single dollar of that check. Not one. I was an ER nurse working 3 jobs, eating cold noodles in my car, counting quarters before payday. And somewhere in that beautiful room sat the person who had forged my name to steal $70,000 a year out of an old man's love. I set down my wine glass. My hands didn't shake. They never do when it matters. And for the first time in my life, I stopped being the quiet one. But to understand how I ended up at that table, with a folder in my lap, you have to go back 4 years, to the night I sat in my car at 3 in the morning and couldn't make the numbers work. My name is Grace Anderson. At 31, I was the kind of person nobody worries about, the strong one, the one who handles it. I clocked out of the emergency room most nights past 2. Then I picked up weekend agency shifts. And on Tuesdays, I taught a CNA class across town. 3 jobs. And still, more weeks than not, I sat in the parking garage doing gas math instead of patient math. Quarter tank, class at 8. Was there enough to make both? I was good at my job. When a 60-year-old man's heart quit in aisle 6 of a grocery store, my hands stayed steady through the whole code. I just could never make my own life add up. I'd taken out my student loans myself, paid them myself, never asked a soul for help. Somewhere along the way, I'd built a wall around the word help brick by brick, until I couldn't have asked if I'd wanted to. My father built the house I grew up in, with his own hands, before he died when I was 24. After the funeral, my mother, Lorraine, handled everything. The accounts, the survivor forms, the paperwork. I was wrecked and grateful, and I signed whatever she put in front of me. I never read a single page. I trusted the strongest grief in the room to be the most honest one. My sister Sloane was the bright one, the beautiful one. She ran a wedding planning business and posted from Cabo with bags that cost more than my car. Her husband Trent talked about investments like a man who'd never lost a dime, though the only thing he was ever good at investing was other people's money. And my grandfather, Walter Hale, was the gentlest man I knew, 80 years old, and still built like the concrete he'd poured before he turned it into a company. He loved me quietly and completely. That spring, my mother texted me, "Sunday dinner, Grandpa's coming." I read it twice, and my stomach tightened like a fist, and I couldn't have told you why. Seeing him should have been the best part of my month, but I had no idea how bad it was about to get. I came to that Sunday dinner straight from a shift, still in scrubs, smelling like hand sanitizer. My mother looked me up and down and sighed. "You always have to make yourself look so hard done by." I let it go. Letting it go was a muscle I'd overdeveloped. Then my grandfather crossed the room and hugged me so tight my spine cracked. When he pulled back, his eyes were shining with some private, satisfied pride I couldn't place. "You're taking such good care of yourself," he said, just to me. "It puts my mind at ease." I laughed, confused. I reheated gas station coffee to save $4. Whatever was easing his mind, it wasn't my life. We were halfway through the roast when he set down his fork and asked it for the first time in front of me. "How's that check treating you, sweetheart?" I thought he meant my paycheck. "I'm getting by," I said. "Hospital pays what it pays." Across the table, my mother set her water glass down, a beat too hard, and pivoted the whole conversation toward Sloane's latest client. Fast, the way you'd grab a dropped scalpel. I noticed it the way you notice a rhythm change on a monitor, a flicker you can't unsee. But Grandpa wasn't done. "I kept that card you sent me last month," he said, smiling. "Stuck it right on the fridge. best handwriting in the family. I went very still. I had not sent him a card. Not last month. Not ever. I opened my mouth, and my mother stood up and steered him toward the den, her hand firm on his elbow, her voice bright and loud. The moment closed like a door. The next morning, the mail told me I wasn't just tired, I was robbed. A thick envelope from an accounting firm I'd never heard of, addressed to me, referencing in dry tax language, ties the annual gifts to Grace Anderson, made on behalf of Mr. Walter Hale. There was a number in there that put me on my own kitchen floor. $84,000. In the last year alone, I read it 4 times. I read charts for a living. The letter was not ambiguous. Somebody had been gifting me, on paper, more than 3 times what I earned breaking my body in an emergency room, and I had never seen a cent of it. I called my mother that night and kept my voice easy. Random question. Has Grandpa ever sent anything to me through you? A pause. Half a second too long. What on earth are you talking about? Then, softer. The way you talk down a confused patient. Honey, you're working yourself stupid. Go to bed. I hung up and stared at the letter on my floor. I'd just been gaslit by the woman who raised me. Gently, expertly, in under a minute. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. A week later, she asked me to help clear out the spare room. I said yes, because saying yes was another muscle I've really, but also because I wanted inside that house. While she made coffee, I sat at her desk. Her laptop was open to her checking account, and I did something I'm not proud of, and would do again. I scrolled. There they were, $7,000 deposited the first of every month. Regular as a heartbeat, smaller in the older months, 5,000, then climbing. And right beneath each deposit, within a day, an outgoing transfer of the same amount to an account ending in 4 digits I'd seen before. Months back, splitting the cost of Grandpa's Christmas gift, Sloane had handed me a check off her own account. Same 4 digits. The money came in to my mother and went straight out to my sister. I photographed the screen with my pulse loud in my ears. Steady hands, the gift of the job. Then my sister's voice cut across the room. What exactly are you doing on Mom's computer, Grace? Ice. I smiled. Helping. And I closed the laptop and went back to folding curtains. Because yelling feels good for 4 seconds and loses you the war. That was the lowest part. Not because I'd been caught. Because sitting there, I understood the trap. The money flowed from Grandpa to Mom to Sloane. And every link in that chain belonged to someone else's bank, someone else's account, someone else's signature. I could see the crime. I couldn't touch the proof. And then I remembered the card on his fridge. Best handwriting in the family. Someone hadn't just taken the money. Someone had written to him as me, year after year, in my name, to keep him grateful and quiet. That was a different kind of crime, and I was only seeing the top of it. I had spent 31 years being the strong one, the person nobody worries about, and I realized then, no one was coming to save me. I had to save myself. So I did the thing I'd never done in my life. I asked a stranger for help. A free legal aid clinic. 6-week wait. The lawyer, Dana Whitfield, listened to my whole story without once telling me I was overreacting, which almost made me cry. Then she explained the machinery I'd been blind to. Your grandfather wrote the checks, she said. If someone signed your name on the back and deposited them into an account that wasn't yours, that's a forged endorsement. The front looks legal, so the bank never blinks. The fraud lives on the back. I leaned forward. So I pull the backs. She shook her head slowly. You can't. You're not the account holder, and you're not the payer. Only the man who wrote the checks, or law enforcement, can make that bank produce the endorsement images. She let it sit. His trust in your mother is the lock. And understand what you're looking at, Grace. If your name was signed by someone else's hand to take your money, that can rise to forgery in this state. That's criminal. So I needed my grandfather. and my mother had spent 4 years standing exactly between us, quietly, methodically, week by week. A forensic accountant named Russ ran what he called a lifestyle analysis. Sloane's business had been bleeding for 3 years. Unpaid vendors, a tax lien filed, and mysteriously satisfied. My mother's house had been one missed payment from foreclosure, and then somehow wasn't. Both holes lined up almost perfectly, with thousands a month flowing in from somewhere off the books. "I can show the money landed in their lives," Russ said. "What I can't do is put a name on the hand that signed the back. For that, you need the endorsement images. And for those, you need the man who wrote the checks." Then my mother called, sweet as pie, with an assignment. Grandpa's turning 80. A big dinner at his house. The whole family, his oldest friends. "You'll handle the flowers, won't you? You're good at the small things." I looked at my file on the table and understood exactly what I'd been handed. Every person who mattered, in one room. You cannot rewrite a story that 30 people watched happen. "Of course," I said. "I'd love to do the flowers." They were building me the perfect stage with my own stolen money. They had no idea what was coming. Getting to my grandfather was its own small war. Every call my mother answered. "He's resting. He's out. I'll have him call you back." He never did. She'd made herself the switchboard of his whole life. So, I drove a card to his mailbox myself, in my own real handwriting. While her car was gone. "Coffee. Just you and me. There's something I need to ask you in person." 3 days of silence. Then an unknown number. "Gracie." His voice, low and careful, calling from a friend's house. "You want to see me without your mother there. I need you to tell me why. Because lately I've had the feeling something in this family isn't right, and nobody will look me in the eye and say it." We met in a back booth. I told him the truth, slowly, and laid one canceled check on the table. One he'd written. One I'd gotten through his own bank, with nothing but his name. "Pay to the order of Grace Anderson. $7,000. His own steady hand. "Turn it over, Grandpa." He did. On the back was my name, signed in a looping, confident hand that was not mine and never had been. His thumb moved over the forged signature, like he could feel it was wrong. "That's not your writing," he said. Not a question. "No, I've never seen $1 of it. 4 years. He wanted to drive to my mother's house that night. I put my hand over his. "Not like that. She'll cry, she'll explain, and by morning she'll have talked you back out of believing your own eyes." He didn't argue, because he knew it was true. "You wrote the checks," I told him. "That means only you can authorize the bank to release the endorsements. And then we do it once, in front of everyone, where she can't pull you into the den and rewrite it." He was quiet a long time. Then, I built everything I have by never being afraid of the truth. Don't let me be afraid of it now, even if it wears my daughter's face. The party was beautiful. Candles, the roses I'd arranged, 14 people at a long table, a string quartet my sister hired with money meant to keep me afloat. I sat at the far end with a slim folder in my lap. Just 3 checks, front and back. "A wall of paper looks like a vendetta," Dana had said. 3 checks look like the truth. My grandfather tapped his fork against his glass, and the room went quiet. "Before we cut the cake, I want to say something to my granddaughter." He looked down the table at me, and he asked it one last time, gentle as ever. "How's that check treating you, sweetheart?" The table chuckled, charmed. My mother's smile froze like frost. "Funny you should ask, Grandpa," I said. And I opened the folder and laid 3 checks face up in the center of the table, where the candlelight caught them. "Grandpa has been sending these. $7,000 a month for almost 4 years. My voice came out level and clear. I never saw a single dollar. My mother's chair scraped back. "Grace, this is not the time. You're confused. Turn the check over," I said. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't have to. And then the room went completely silent. My grandfather reached down with a hand that did not shake, picked up the nearest check, and turned it over so everyone could see the back. My name, forged, deposited into an account that was not mine. He read the account number out loud. Then he lifted his eyes, not to me, but to my sister. Sloane, is that your account number? She said nothing, which was louder than anything she could have said. Trent set the wine bottle down on the sideboard with a small, careful click, and took half a step back from the table, the way a man does when he realizes he's standing too close to something about to go off. Then Sloane exploded, the way cornered people do, loud, fast, aimed at me. You jealous, miserable. You never spent a dime on yourself. You never wanted anything. The money was just sitting there. It would have rotted. We made something of it. My mother was crying the practiced tears now, reaching for his sleeve. Daddy, I was going to pay it back. Every cent. I was going to lose the house your son built. What was I supposed to do? I stayed in my chair. I let them be loud, because their noise was doing my work for me. When there was finally a breath in it, I spoke softly, so they had to go still to hear me. Mom, you told me you don't steal from family. You said you only borrow. I let the rose-sweet silence hold. Show me the loan papers. She had none. Of course she had none. That was when the quiet, gray-haired man near the head of the table set down his club soda. He'd come as a guest. He was my grandfather's longtime attorney, and he spoke for the first time, mild and precise. I'd choose your next words carefully. All of you. Signing another person's name to take a check, and writing letters in that person's name to obtain more, can amount to forgery and theft by deception. This is the sort of thing a prosecutor looks at. It should be handled properly, starting now. The word forgery moved around that table like a cold draft. I closed the folder and stood. I don't need an apology tonight. I've stopped needing those. What I need is the money returned and a report filed where it belongs. I straightened my dress. The flowers are paid for. I'll send you the bill for those too. And for the first time in my life, I walked out of a family dinner with my head perfectly level. The forensic accounting put the diverted total near $278,000. The endorsement images came back for all 4 years, and with them, letters. Notes written to my grandfather in my name, in that same forged hand. One asked him to raise the monthly amount from $5,000 to $7,000 for a nurse practitioner program I was never enrolled in. The checks were a wound. The letters were a plan. You can argue your way out of borrowing money that was sitting there. You cannot argue your way out of signing someone else's name to ask for more of it. A restitution agreement was secured against my mother's house and what was left of my sister's business. The criminal report moved forward with the letters in the file, and words like forgery are not words a prosecutor waves off. My grandfather changed his arrangements that same week. The money comes straight to me now, no one in between. The first thing he did with the rest was set up a nursing scholarship in my father's name. He said his son-in-law would have liked that better than a watch. I dropped the weekend job. I kept teaching because I wanted to, not because I had to. And for the first time in 7 years, I slept the whole night through. I don't speak to my mother or my sister anymore. I didn't cut them off. I cut off their access to my name, my silence, and my money, which is a different thing entirely. On my own refrigerator, I keep a photocopy of one canceled check, front, then back. Not to stay angry, to stay clear. Protecting what's yours was never the betrayal. It's just the rent you finally pay to live in peace.